there was a Sunday school teacher, and she was discussing the 10 Commandments with her 5- and 6-year-old kids. And after explaining, honor thy father and thy mother, she asked, is there a commandment that teaches us how to treat our brothers and sisters? And without missing a beat, the little boy said, thou shalt not kill. And a little girl who was attending a wedding for the first time, she whispered to her mother, why is the bride dressed in white? And the mother said, because white is the color of happiness, and today is the happiest day of her life. And the child thought about that for a moment, and she said, well, then why is the groom wearing black? Out of the mouths of babes. So last week I started a series based on this book, The Lazarus Blueprint. We have some of these books in our bookstore, and I would encourage you to buy it, because it can be life-changing if you let it. And it's based around the story of Lazarus. Now, we all know the story of Lazarus, right? We know that he died. And we know that Jesus raised him from the dead. And so what we have the opportunity to do is look at that story and see, is there anything in that story that applies to our life? Now, last week, our step 1 was turn away. And you'll remember that when Jesus got the message that Lazarus was dying, and he's only 2 miles away, that he continues what he's doing. And so we looked at the metaphysical message of that to us, that means that you and I have to not dwell on the problem. We don't have to leap into the worst case scenario. We can stop making a mountain, building a mountain that's higher and higher. We can step back from that situation taking over our entire life. When he didn't panic, when he didn't rush, he was sending an important message to himself. The message was, oh, this is not the end of the world. And you and I, we get that opportunity at times. Something happens to us, and I have to tell you, I'm a ditherer. You know, I can do a good job of thinking about it and walking around it, and all of a sudden, some little bitty thing is a big thing. And what this story tells us is, no, don't go there. So the second step in this is to remove the stone. So this is the part of the scripture that we're talking about this week. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. And many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And he said, where have you laid them? And they said to him, Lord, come and see. Then Jesus came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. And Jesus said, take away the stone. And Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, already there's a stench because he's been dead for 4 days. So metaphysically, metaphorically, you and I can look at the characters and the situation in that story and apply it to something in our life. Do you notice that what was the first thing that Martha said? If you had been here, he wouldn't have died. Isn't there that part of us that gets caught up in the could have, would have, should have? The if only thinking. It's the part of us that clings to the belief that we can go back and change the past. But how many of us get caught up in that? Yeah. There's a little small showing of hands, and I know there's a large showing in our heart. And then the other characters in the story were the many Jews that were there. And they had come to comfort Martha and Mary. And, you know, they represent those who would keep us focused on our problem. It might be our family and our friends. And, you know, it might be that ego self voice. And these voices come disguised as sympathy. And they're all labeling us a victim. You know, there's a difference from compassion, which offers love and support and lifts us up, have you ever been in a situation where you were angry, and maybe rightfully so, and your friends were righteously helping you be angry? Yep. Yeah, we've all been there. Mm-hmm.
That's how it works. That's why you compare your friends.
That's right. That's how it works. Looking for someone to blame. And when truth is that I am of us is already looking for a way to reclaim its power. It's already looking for being whole and how to heal. It really doesn't want help to be less than. And if you have friends in your life who insist on seeing you as less than, as seeing you as a victim, as seeing you as their poor brother or poor sister, or their down and out friend, it's okay to tell them that you've decided that that's not your story. It's okay to say you see yourself whole and ask them to hold a vision of wholeness. And you know what? If they can't, well, they don't know how to be your friend in that moment. They may want to be your friend, but in that moment, they don't know how to be your friend. And sometimes we have to step back from those friends for a moment and make the choice to be with friends that can see our wholeness, who can lift us up. It's why when someone is ill, I try not to ever see them ill. I close my mind and eyes and hold that picture. I hold the picture of them walking around, doing the things they like to do, cooking, cleaning, playing with kids, laughing, dancing, playing music. I had someone that used to always be in my face. You know, have you ever have somebody that's always in your face? And when they were ill, I just saw them being in my face that much more. Because I wanted to see the life energy. I wanted to see wholeness. And then there's another thing in the story that we can look at. What was in front of the cave? A stone. Now, you and I can imagine this cave. It's a cave big enough to use as a crypt. And I imagine it being a natural cave in the side of a mountain. And they found a stone big enough to cover the entrance. It says that he comes out walking. That means that cave entrance had to be pretty big. And so think of this stone in front of this cave. It was no pebble. It was big. And it represents that which is blocking you and me from moving forward. That thing that's not trivial, that thing that takes so much effort to move. And if there's any place or any way in your life where you want your life to be different than it is today, then there is a stone that you have to move. And guess what? You're the one who has to determine what that stone is. And you can get help, but you're the one that has to move the stone. So we all take a deep breath, because that sounds heavy and hard. And so I'm going to tell you some things about the stone. The stone is never another person. The stone is never an external condition. Now, it's not to say that there isn't an external condition or situation. And it's not to say that there aren't people who are contributing to that situation. But they're not the ones causing the block. They are simply the trigger, the sign, the mirror, the messenger that you have some work to do to remove that block. The stone is always something inside of you. And it could be a false belief. It could be a false belief that I'm not worthy enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart, I'm not creative, I'm broken, I'm damaged. It could be a story that we're unwilling to release. It could be a traumatic memory that we're afraid to face. In the book, the Jaffolas, the authors, Richard and Mary Alice Jaffola, say that often the stone is unforgiveness. That somewhere in our life there is resentment, anger, shame, guilt, and blame. And this is a direct quote. If you find an area of unforgiveness lurking somewhere in your heart, but you think it is not directly related to your problem, don't be tempted to pass it by. It is related. You know, and there's always those things that we say, oh, I could never forgive that. And yet, yes, you can. Forgiveness is not about excusing another person's behavior. I wonder how many times I have said that. Over 16 years, I have probably said that at least 5 times a year, if not 10. It's not about excusing another person's behavior or making what they did okay. It's not about the other person at all. Forgiveness is about you, and it's about me. It's about saying, I refuse to give any more of my life energy to that person or that situation. I am releasing my anger, and I'm reclaiming my joy. The authors say the opening to the cave is both entrance and exit. You are welcome to stay in the dark cave and feel justified in your passionate anger and unforgiveness. But then you must also be willing to pay the price of remaining in the cave. Hanging on to anger is self-destructive. If someone hurt you in the past, why let a memory of this person continue to hurt you now and in the future? One of the most effective ways to identify your stone. And we may be sitting there thinking, well, I have no problems, I have no stones. Maybe not today. But we all have those stones that need to be removed. The most effective way to identify the stones that need to be removed is through meditation. Spending time in the silence, listening for one clear voice. That one clear voice will always, if you give it time, it'll always give you the information you need. And you may get that information during the meditation, or you may get it later in the shower or as you're driving down the street. There is a prayer, and I've got a stack of them up here. I've given it out probably once a year for 15, 16 times now. It's called the Grace Prayer. And I love the Grace Prayer. I love the Grace Prayer because it has a promise. The first or second time I went to Unity Village, a minister challenged a class to say this prayer every day for a year to see what would happen. And I did. Now, I don't know, I became a minister, but I don't know what will happen for you. The Grace Prayer says, for thee I thirst. Oh God, I thirst for you. Into thy hands I commit my spirit. I commit my soul. I commit my body. I commit my life. I commit this problem. I commit this stone. Thy will is my will. Thy will be done through me. Heal me at depth. Reveal that which needs to be revealed. Heal that which needs to be healed, so that I can glorify you, God, and live in the fullness of grace. It is finished. If you're having trouble identifying that stone, here's a prescription. Use it for a year. Now, the main character in our story is Jesus, and Jesus represents our inner wisdom. Jesus represents our highest, deepest, greatest self, that part of us that is an expression of God. And once we have tuned into our greatest self, our capital S self, look, Maggie, our big S self. That is. Once we do that, and we get that message about that inner stone, we get to make some decisions. It is our choice. We have to decide if we're ready to take that stone away, or if we want to continue holding on. And we think, of course we want it gone away. But it's not always so easy. How will I be? Who will I be if I release my anger? Who will I be? Who am I if I let go of my story? Every one of us can think of someone in their story. I had an aunt, eccentric aunt. I loved her. She was the one who introduced me to unity. And my aunt got divorced from my uncle when her son was a year old. 30 years later, she was still talking about him, angry at him, blaming him. And I always thought it was ironic because he had a really good job and she lived pretty well and didn't have to work. And she was so angry. And he was out in California, had remarried, had other children, and he was happy. He had let it go. But she was still held on to it. She couldn't let go of that story. And she was a beautiful woman. She could have met someone. And she frequently did, but after 2 or 3 dates, they didn't call her back again. Who would she have been if she had been willing to let go of her story? Who are you and I when we let go of our story? Who are you and who am I when we let go of that belief, that little belief that's held deep in our heart? For most of us, when we get to the point of realizing what the stone is, we say, oh, there's something rotten in that cave. It smells bad. I don't want to expose that. Yet our higher self will persist, knowing that we will not find true peace, happiness, and success until we remove that stone. So next week, I invite you to spend some time in meditation. Spend some time listening for that one clear voice. I'll close with the end of the chapter. The story has Jesus approaching the tomb of Lazarus, filled with unshakable trust that something extremely powerful would take place. He knew nothing could happen until the great stone sealing the opening of the cave and standing between him and Lazarus was moved out of the way. Right now, something huge is standing between you and good health, between you and a loving relationship, or between you and inner peace, or between you and joy. Nothing can happen until you move that huge roadblock out of the way. Now it's your turn. Take away the stone.